For more, we are joined by EWTN Vice President Matthew Bunson. Matthew, I don't know. I kind of didn't expect this to happen. I think I speak for most American Catholics when I say I was surprised. How about you?
Well, it was always generally assumed that certainly not in our lifetime that we would have an American Pope, and yet certainly the College of Cardinals, 133 cardinal electors who gathered in the Sistine Chapel, had assessed Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost and found him exactly the person they were looking for. He checked all of the boxes that you would want in a Pope. He's a brilliant canonist, in other words, an expert in church law. He'd been a missionary for many, many years. He was a bishop. He was somebody who's very familiar with the Vatican. He'd served in Latin America. He'd served in America, of course, United States. He had long service here in Rome. And yet the thing that seemed to be the biggest obstacle was being an American. And yet they didn't consider that at the end of the day to be that much of an obstacle, largely because he'd been gone for so long from the United States and because he was such an effective bridge builder among all of those different nations and parts of the church, that they saw him as the man that they are entrusting the future of the church with.
You know, I'm just going to put it out there because this is my chance to put it out there. Can we get rid of some of the things that I think a lot of American Catholics didn't like over the past several years and go back to more of the tradition? Do you think that'll happen with the new Pope Leo? And I'm speaking of simple things like having the opportunity to have Latin Mass, getting rid of consubstantial. Like, I'm sorry. Now, can we get back to the basics of basic English and, frankly, less politics? Is that too much to ask?
Well, the way to think of it is that every pope brings his own style, his own emphasis, his own way of doing things. We have already seen with Pope Leo XIV, from the minute he walked out in the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica, or behind me, that he was looking very different from what we had seen with Pope Francis. The night of his election, he wore the simple white cassock, so to speak, of the popes. Pope Leo XIV arrived dressed like popes of the past, Pope Benedict XVI, Pope John Paul II, with what they call the mozzetta, the red and the stole. So he was really using a lot of very important papal symbols as a way of establishing continuity, not just with Pope Francis, but with the line of popes who preceded him. And I think we've been seeing that over the last few days, that yes, he's referencing Pope Francis, but he's also talking an awful lot about Pope Benedict XVI and Pope John Paul II. So he's establishing himself almost out of the gate as his own man. And I think we're going to see over the next days, weeks, and months his set of priorities. In fact, I think we've gotten already a few glimpses into what he thinks are the most pressing issues facing him now as Pope.
Yeah, including a vision of the future of human dignity. Listen to this, get your reaction on the other side.
The Church offers everyone its wealth of social doctrine to respond to another industrial revolution and the developments of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor.
Human dignity in the AI era. 15 seconds or so, Matthew. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, he's building on one of the great traditions of the modern church, and that is Catholic social teaching, where the church was concerned initially under Pope Leo XIII with the Industrial Revolution and its impact. Pope Leo XIV is concerned about the AI revolution. Both revolutions, both impacting society. It's why he took the name Leo, in honor of this earlier great pope, but clearly very heavily focused on these revolutions that are changing everything before us and providing answers to the future that we really need, especially in defense of the dignity of the human person at a time when all of it is under threat.
You know, I think I can share this because you said it. Some of the names that you mentioned, I think, will make American Catholics feel very good when they hear things like Pope John Paul II, Pope Paul grew up with, Pope Leo. These are ideas, and they sort of give off this idea of tradition, of humanity.
They do.
Maybe we can have a World Youth Day or something like that. You think we'll get one of those?
Well, there's one coming up in August where we're going to be canonizing a Catholic mountain climber by the name of Pier Giorgio Frassati. I'm looking forward to seeing what Pope Leo XIV has to say on that particular day.
Yeah, that's going to be very, very big. And it was one of the most important events of my youth, seeing Pope John Paul II World Youth Day in Denver. Really quite something. And
Exactly.
I think a lot of young people really, and by the way, can I just say in closing, there seems to be this very palpable youth movement in the church. Have you noticed that? I mean, I sort of see it even if I go to Mass.
Very much so. They're drawn to what we call the truth and beauty of the Catholic faith. This last Easter, we had banner numbers, a huge crop of baptisms and receptions into the church. The biggest group that came in that large body of new converts, young people.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I noticed it as well, and I think I speak for most when I say that's a very good thing to see. Matthew Bunson joining us today. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate your time today.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, really a pleasure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.